Welcome back, friends. You are listening to the Juicebox Podcast. Kim's an adult living with type 1. She's had it for 2 years. Today we talk about advocating for yourself, paying attention to your health, and some of the confusions that other people might have about your diabetes. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. AG1 is offering my listeners a free $76 gift when you sign up. You'll get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure you check out drinkag1.com/juicebox to get this offer. Don't forget to save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com. All you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. Are you an adult living with type 1 or the caregiver of someone who is, and a U.S. resident? If you are, I'd love it if you would go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and take the survey. When you complete that survey, your answers are used to move type 1 diabetes research of all kinds. So if you'd like to help with type 1 research, but don't have time to go to a doctor or an investigation, and you want to do something right there from your sofa, this is the way. t1dexchange.org/juicebox. It should not take you more than about 10 minutes. The episode you're about to listen to was sponsored by Touched by Type 1. Go check them out right now on Facebook, Instagram, and of course at touchedbytype1.org. Check out that programs tab when you get to the website to see all the great things that they're doing for people living with type 1 diabetes. Touchedbytype1.org. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. Learn more and get started today at contournext.com/juicebox. US Med is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and we've been getting our diabetes supplies from US Med for years. You can as well. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Use the link or the number, get your free benefits check, and get started today with US Med.
Hi, I'm Kim. I am a type 1 diabetic. I was diagnosed at 36 years old. I've been diagnosed for about 2 years, to celebrate my 2-year in the middle of November. And yeah, I also have hypothyroidism and some other fun things coming out of my diabetic diagnosis, but I had no symptoms. It just randomly was found one day, and I've been injecting insulin ever since.
Other fun things. What other fun things?
Yeah, so actually the reason, I'll just kind of get in my diagnosis story because it kind of rolls into it.
Sure.
So my husband and I have been together for 7 years. Whoops.
It's not hurtful. He won't hear this. Don't worry.
And so, about 2 years ago, we were, talking about family planning and figuring things out. And so I was like, I'm a huge advocate for health, and I'm very fit. I'm very active. I've always am like, what am I eating? What am I doing? What am I putting in my body? Very conscious of all that. So I wanted to get some blood work done, see what was going on. And I went to see, my regular doctors, and everyone's like, oh, you're fine, you're fine. And I just didn't feel fine, like there's just something off. I was having some irregular periods, which was my only main symptom. And everyone was like, oh, that's stress. You're fine. Like, no worries, keep kicking me down the road. And so finally I went to see a hormone nurse practitioner, and she did like so much blood work on me. Like, I'm talking like every time I go, it'd be like 14 vials. Mm-hmm. And she was like, your glucose levels are a little elevated. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And so she tested me again 3 months later. It kept going up and up, but I was still producing insulin, and I still was, my A1C was like kind of more in range. And so she was like, I don't know, like maybe, you have some other hormone things going on. So maybe that's all, whatever. And finally, the third round, I was actually on vacation for my husband's 40th birthday in St. Martin. So I had no service. And she called me, like, she left a voicemail when I got it. It was basically like, you need to come into the office immediately. And I was like, oh, great. What's am I dying? And she said that my fasting glucose was 237 and my A1C was 12.5.
Wow.
And also I had no symptoms. Like I can count on one hand, maybe even 3 fingers, the times that I felt super thirsty. I drink a lot of water, so going to the bathroom wasn't anything that was standing out to me.
Right.
So I went in that next day and she was like, I can't let you leave here without injecting insulin. And I'm like, what? Like, it was just, I basically blacked out. Just basically, you gotta do this. And so my brother is actually type 1 diabetic. We have different dads, but we have the same mom. So he was diagnosed at the age of 9. He's now 52. Wow, I'm not knowing any dates today. And so... And like, I always communicate that to my doctors. I'm always like, my brother has type 1. He got it when he was 9, the juvenile diabetes time range when everyone thinks that's the only time you can get diagnosed with type 1. I always would tell my doctors, no one ever was concerned or whatever. And I was never tested for any of like the antibodies ever. I don't think my mom ever thought that was a thing.
Right.
So, all I remember is like my brother he still doesn't really manage his diabetes well, doesn't wear CGM. He's still on MDI, like really just rocking and rolling on his own, which is fine. He's old school and, whatever. And I just remember him like growing up, like he would put himself in, let his sugar get low and because he was upset about X or, Y or whatever. And I just remember when she was telling me that I was type 1 diabetic, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be in a coma. I'm not going to be able to survive. I'm going to die in my sleep, like catastrophizing every single potential outcome just because that's all I knew. And I was I was so upset. I was like devastated and, all the traumatic symptoms that I'm sure everybody feels when they first get diagnosed.
Yeah.
And so, I was trying to manage that, right? So we kind of put the family planning on the side. I was like, well, now I'm type 1 diabetic. I don't know what that means. Like, I'm trying to just figure out like how to stay alive and still like function in life. And completely, like I have a
completely
job.
New life, Kim, right? Like it just felt like it started over.
Yep.
Before you move forward, can I ask you a weird question? I'm gonna forget to ask if I don't.
Always.
Your brother's a little kid. He pouts by making his blood sugar low. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah. So he was diagnosed at 9. This was he was born in 72. So like this is the early 80s, right? Yeah. I don't know what tech was like then.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. Wasn't great.
Yeah. So like, whatever. And like I'm sure there wasn't a lot of education out. So like my, whatever. I just remember my mom was like, we always were at Children's Hospital, like always. But as he got into his like teens, he was very rebellious and was like, I'm going to do whatever I want. Cause I think he just didn't want the diabetes to kind of hold him back. And so I think he really would just use it as like, not really threatened, but kind of get attention from it. So I just remember there would be like one time, like I think him and his girlfriend broke up and he like was really upset and let his sugar get low. And my mom and I and my dad went over one day and he was like laying in bed, like probably 10 minutes from a coma. And I just was like a young little girl, like, what is happening?
So Kim, like what I'm wondering is if your memory's not like a little fuzzled, like is he letting himself get really high? Like not giving himself insulin? Because low would lead to a seizure pretty quickly if he was like giving himself too much insulin. You've probably heard me talk about US Med and how simple it is to reorder with US Med using their email system. But did you know that if you don't see the email and you're set up for this, you have to set it up. They don't just randomly call you, but I'm set up to be called if I don't respond to the email because I don't trust myself 100%. So one time I didn't respond to the email. And the phone rings at the house. It's like, ring, you know how it works. And I picked it up. I was like, hello. And it was just the recording. It was like, US Med. Doesn't actually sound like that, but you know what I'm saying. It said, hey, I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's basically like, hey, your order's ready. You want us to send it? Push this button if you want us to send it. Or if you'd like to wait, I think it lets you put it off like a couple of weeks or push this button for that. That's pretty much it. I pushed the button to send it. And a few days later, box right at my door. That's it. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits checked now and get started with US Med. Dexcom, Omnipod, Tandem, Freestyle. They've got all your favorites. Even that new eyelet pump. Check them out now at usmed.com/juicebox or by calling 888-721-1514. There are links in the show notes of your podcast player and links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and to all of the sponsors. The Contour NextGen blood glucose meter is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and it's entirely possible that it is less expensive in cash than you're paying right now for your meter through your insurance company. That's right. If you go to my link, contournext.com/juicebox, you're going to find links to Walmart, Amazon, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Kroger, and Meijer. You could be paying more right now through your insurance for your test strips and meter than you would pay through my link for the Contour NextGen and Contour Next test strips in cash. What am I saying? My link may be cheaper out of your pocket than you're paying right now, even with your insurance. And I don't know what meter you have right now. I can't say that. But what I can say for sure is that the Contour NextGen meter is accurate. It is reliable, and it is the meter that we've been using for years. contournext.com/juicebox. And if you already have a Contour meter and you're buying test strips, doing so through the Juicebox Podcast link will help to support the show.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because I distinctly remember him just being like angry and like combative and like just like almost like he was drunk. So I think it was probably a low, but honestly, it could have been high too. I don't know. I just
Does
remember.
he end up in the hospital after that?
Yeah, he was in the hospital a couple times.
I'm going to guess he stopped taking his insulin, but like, and that you're just 9, like your little kid memory is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But whatever. Doesn't matter.
I just remember it was traumatic in general. And I was like, I don't want that. I was like, is that going to be my life?
Right.
Like, is that going to be my life? And, you know, all the things. And so like the first year was really traumatic. And I was like, oh, I kind of got a little solace being like, oh, I can like, I have my brother to help with. Like I can talk to my brother about things.
Right.
And very negative about it. Very like, this is the worst thing that's ever could happen to me. And like, it's like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't eat anything. And I'm like, every time we go out to dinner, you're always eating pasta. You're eating everything. So like, calm down. And so I just like really quickly realizing like, he's not going to be somebody I can.
My guy's not going to be my guy, I don't think. Yeah.
And he's not my guy. I'm grateful because he, like the way he managed, I didn't want that. I was like, I'm going to do the complete opposite of that. Like, I want to ensure that I am staying fully on top of everything. I swung the complete opposite way. Mm-hmm. I got it on a CGM probably. So I was told on November 1 that I had diabetes. I didn't get to see an endo until the 18th of November. And I didn't get a CGM until maybe December.
Mm-hmm. But you sort of used your brother the way people use bad parents. You were like, oh, I can either be this thing or fight against it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like my mom and my dad both raised a type 1 diabetic, and I don't talk to my family about diabetes. Like my mom literally like said the other day, are you sure you really have diabetes? I wish I was joking.
This doesn't really feel like with your brother. So is that her vibe?
I think she just feels like, because, you know, I am super on top of my health. I've always been that way. I've always worked out. I've always ate healthy. I've always been that, you know, like the black sheep of the family that was like, let's have organic vegetables or let's eat a salad. And everybody's like, let's eat potatoes and all these things. Right. And so
I got yelled at in the grocery store yesterday because I got sent off for something. And I came back and I was like, hey, I got this one instead because there's no high fructose corn syrup in it. My wife goes, that's not what I asked for. And I was like, okay, I'll go back. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. I'm like a label reader and, you know, and they just think I'm like this crazy person. So I think my mom just is like, I don't know if it's out of guilt that she's trying to act like I don't have it. Because, you know, I have another brother. So I have 2 older brothers. I'm the youngest of 3. Mm-hmm. I'm the only girl. And my other brother's completely fine. You know.
I'm so sorry to cut you off, but I did the math on that. You said I had 2 older brothers. I'm the youngest of 3. And then you said I'm the only girl. And I went, yeah. 1. Yeah, I got it.
Process of elimination, right?
It's like, wow. Do I seem stupid? Are you over-explaining stuff to me? No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just making it really detailed so the listeners can understand my family dynamics. I don't know. So I don't really talk about it with my family. I really don't. Like the only person I really like talk to about is obviously my husband because he lives with me. I've met some really amazing people in the community. Like, actually, the reason why I listened to your podcast was because of my friend Carly. Shout out Carly. I know she listens to this all the time. Yeah. She was like, do you listen to this Juicebox podcast? And I was like, no. And like, I don't know if like Arden was way younger when she was diagnosed, but like, I don't know if anybody you've spoken to before has been like, when they first get diagnosed, you're like, there's just information overload and there's just too much. And you're just like, I kind of want to like, not listen to things. I don't want to know what's happening. Like, I just kind of want to ignore it.
Yeah.
And so this, like, when she introduced it to me, I was like, I was going through it just was like not the time.
Right.
And so, about a year after my diagnosis, we really were starting to figure out more around like fertility stuff. And then I realized, and then like told me that, so in December of last year, diabetes threw me into early menopause at the age of 36.
Ew. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah. I didn't mean to be, I'm sorry.
No,
my wife is going through it right now. I'm sorry. Like I have a specific understanding of what you just said. So yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So, in the span of a year, more or less, my life completely changed. I'm no longer able to like naturally have a family.
Yeah.
And like, that's fine. We were always kind of on the fence and to begin with. So like, I was like, maybe this is, a higher power's way of making that decision for me. And they knew that I probably couldn't make it myself without having some sort of regret one way or the other.
Can I stop there for a second? I'm super interested in that. So you're on the fence about having a baby, but we're probably going to do it. And that's the question is like, is it because of like FOMO? Is it like, well, if we don't, then we're screwed?
Yep. It's honestly like, I feel really badly like
No.
talking about it like this, but like I really did feel left out. Like a lot of my friends are having kids, have kids, like, and like you're a father, like when you have kids, your life changes, like priorities shift, like things are different. It's not the same as your friends that potentially don't have kids. Like that's just how it is. Like it's not wrong. It's not right. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And so and also growing up, like that's kind of what I was told I should do. Like get married, have kids, get married, have kids. Like that, if you don't do that, you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. I always chose my career path because I was like, I want to be successful. Like this is what I want to do. I work in advertising and I love it. Like it's something I've always been doing. I've worked my way up. I'm really proud of where I've landed in my career.
Yeah.
And when I was like, oh, like I can't imagine being a mom on top of this. Like we actually just adopted a dog 6 months ago. And I say to Joe, that's my husband, like, how do people with real kids do this? Like,
I know, because with the dog, you're like, this is a mistake.
It's like, like we both work from home, but it's like I'm in meetings, like basically my whole job is in meetings, right? Like I'm always in meetings, I'm always doing something. So it's like, what's the dog doing? Where's the dog need to go out? Like, I mean, obviously a kid would probably be in school and whatever, but still like, we're getting ready to go out of town. My in-laws are watching our dog. I have to get all of her food ready. I have to get all of her stuff ready. And it's just a dog, like, let alone like if I had a kid that needed like real stuff, And so
yeah.
There are moments where I'm like, actually, this is a blessing in disguise, like whatever. But there are times where I'm still like, man, that really sucks. That like none of these things, I had no say in any of these things that happened to me. Right. I think that's one thing I'm really working through in therapy. I actually found a therapist and her son is type 1 diabetic because I was going to therapy and people would be like, are you sure you're type 1? And I'm like, oh.
Why do so many people say that to you?
Because I'm 5'7", I'm very thin, I work out all the time, I eat very healthy. Like if you didn't, I mean, obviously you can't really tell if somebody has diabetes or not unless you see their tech. But like, if you looked at me, you'd be like, oh, she doesn't have diabetes. Like she's working out, she's doing all these things. She's like all the stuff. And so I actually went for an Invisalign consult the other week and the orthodontist said to me, like, oh, you have diabetes. And I said, yeah. And she goes, how do you have type 2? You're so skinny. And I was like, I don't have type 2. I have type 1. I was diagnosed 2 years ago. She goes, you can't be diagnosed 2 years ago. You're either born with type 1 or you're not. And I'm like,
the Invisalign girl felt real comfortable with that, did she?
I'm like, okay, I have two paths here. One, I can like get crazy pants and be, make a scene and try to educate this woman who's probably not gonna get it. Or two, I could just keep reassuring her I have type 1. And I was like, yeah, I take insulin and da-da-da-da and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I would really double check with your doctor and get tested again to make sure.
I love that. It's awesome. Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Thank you. I will.
I'll get right to that. See, you're a nice person, I can tell. Because I'd be sitting there thinking, oh, I wonder what she doesn't know about Invisalign. Like maybe
Dude, honestly.
Yeah, maybe I should be leaving. in the minds of people who don't know and have half bits of information and have heard a thing, you don't code as diabetes to them. That's what you're saying. Okay. Yeah. Well, I get it.
And like, it's fine, whatever. Like, every diabetic is all different shapes and sizes. And it's just such a unique condition that like everybody is literally different, no matter, our body types, our genetics, like all the things. Once I found out that I was in menopause, they're like, well, you have to get hormone replacement therapy so you don't get osteoporosis and die. And I'm like,
too soon. Great.
Love it. This is great.
These 30s are going amazing.
I'm like, woo, this is my year. And I also was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which I'm not surprised because it runs in my family. I knew that was a matter of time. And like, but to me, I'm like, taking a pill every morning, no big deal. So, just the whole thing. And I'm like, they say things come in threes. And I'm like, okay, I got my 3. Can I be good for the rest of my life? Can these be my only medical problems I have to deal with for the rest of my life? That would be great.
But I'm going to bum you out for a second. I have not had a place to say this in the podcast, so I guess I'm going to say it here because of what you just brought up. But, years and years ago, this woman named Michelle comes on and to tell a story about her son who had type 1 who passed away. And he passes away when I'm pretty sure he was 10 years old.
Wow.
And about a month ago, she died in a car accident, but along with her husband and like 3 of their best friends.
Wow.
And I thought, beyond all the things I thought about it, how terrible it is, etc., I thought on people who think something bad's happened to me, so nothing else bad can happen to me, And it's such a human thing. Like, oh, I got my thing, like I'm done, and I'm like, it's just not how it works, Anyway, I'm sorry, like you're such an upbeat person, but like everybody should find the episode. Jessie was here, and Jessie was here too. Michelle was on twice to talk about her son, about surviving after losing a child, and diabetes awareness, and she was a lovely person who stayed in the diabetes space and helped other people with type 1 her whole life. But yeah, just like a freak accident.
Oh God. I mean, that's so true. I'm like, that's why I'm like always, because like I said, I had no symptoms, right? Like,
your period was off. That was it, right?
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. And I have a very stressful job. We travel a lot. Like, everyone's like, oh, you're fine. Like, they would test all these things. You're fine. You're fine. Oh, you're great. Like, everything's great. So now I'm like, okay, well, I had no symptoms. Like, do I have cancer? Do I have, like, you know what I mean? You're just like hyper aware.
Oh, yeah, sure. Like, if I didn't look like I was sick at all and this happened to me, like, what else is coming? Is that how you feel? Like,
yep.
Yeah. No, I think like that. I definitely think, like, just because things feel good. I credit my youngest brother, Rob, who I guess I don't talk about a ton. Rob was always in trouble and you knew about it, or in trouble and you hadn't found out about it yet. There's only 2 states of Rob as a child, And I do wonder, like, I guess I think about like illness that way too, and I think, by the way, I think that's what makes me interested in what's going on with people and trying to stay a little ahead of the curve. Like, I don't want to find out when it's too late about anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. And like, I get blood work done all the time. I'm like, I know blood work is only a moment in time, but I'm like, I want to know where I'm at. Like, where am I? What am I looking at? Like, what are we playing with here? And my doctors think I'm crazy, but I'm like, hey, my body, I had this huge thing happen to me when I was in my mid 30s. Like, it can happen. And I really want to make sure like that everybody I love and care about, and even people I don't know, like, get blood work done. Like, talk to your family about your past health, not just your parents, not just your siblings, like your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your grandma, your grandpa. Like, things skip generations, things come down. Like, you just need to be aware. And like, I found out my uncle got type 1 when he was 27 on my dad's side.
Right.
And my grandpa, I think he was probably more type 2. My mom's not sure. So diabetes obviously runs in our family. And so like, it's kind of going back to the menopause of it all. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm trying to stop that lineage.
Yeah. Well, listen, yeah, you're not going to pass to anybody if you don't have a baby. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot lately of finding a way on the podcast to say to people, like, you're not supposed to be out of breath. You're not supposed to be tired. It's cool if you don't sleep well last night and you're tired today, but like, go to bed, fall asleep, get up. If you're still tired, maybe your iron's low. Maybe you have a thyroid issue. Maybe your blood sugar's too high. Like, I don't know, but there are people, I know it sounds crazy, but there are people running around on the planet who don't feel like that. oh, I'm getting older thing is how everyone writes that off. But I just think about like how, like on the simplest idea, for some reason, talked to a lot of people this week who have low iron. You know, they'll discuss like, I had brain fog and I was tired for 2 years. And I'm like, that's 2 years of your life.
Yeah.
Once you're tired 3 days in a row and it's not going away and it feels like it's getting worse, go to the doctor, get some simple blood work. Let the guy look at you and say, hey, you know, your ferritin's like 30 or whatever. And like, and instead of just struggling constantly.
I know.
And I know everybody doesn't know to look for those things. And a lot of doctors aren't helpful with it either. But if you're listening to this, like, you should know, you know?
Yeah. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to get like my A1C tested and my thyroid and maybe some other things. Like, get a metabolic panel. Like, push to get your iron tested, push to get your vitamin D tested.
Yeah.
Like, these are things, because to your point, Scott, like not being able to focus or, you know, being tired or all these things, like it's not always normal. Like,
how about just being snippy? Like you're around other people and you're just, you're the woman I talked to the other day. She's like, you know, we got my husband's, you know, something, I forget even what it was. Like I got my husband's something checked. We fixed it, blah, blah, blah. And he was nicer, you know, like, you know, so you're walking around all day. Your wife's like, guy's kind of a dick. You know, like, and you don't know it. Like, you have no idea it's happening. So
it's so true. And like, I can get more into this, but I was in a diabetes research trial. I was taking an exploratory drug. The research endo was, you know, basically like talking to me about, oh, well, you're doing great and you're doing all these things. And like, but, you know, it started like, because I was like, well, what? I think that I got the COVID vaccine and that's what triggered it. Like, I know I had the antibodies. Like, I'm not saying like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just think that's something that might have activated it.
Yeah.
And because I remember after I got my first shot, I had severe pain on my left-hand side. But he told me, my research endo said that diabetes starts 3 years before you're typically 3 years-ish before you start seeing symptoms or what have you. Because your body's main goal is to keep you alive. So it's going to be doing a lot of work on the back end.
Yeah.
And I think that's why like my menopause happened, because I think like that was happening before I was diagnosed and I just didn't know it, because reproduction's voluntary. So it's like, let's shut something down to give more energy to help keep this person alive.
You know, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. You think like I remember growing up with a girl who just did not get a period forever. And then later you learned there were other things wrong with her.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And like they call that's like, you know, the 5 vital signs. That's like almost a 6th or a 5th or whatever, because it's like, it's important. You know what I mean? Like so many women are dismissed with about like irregular periods or really bad periods or all this. And like, not a lot of people talk about it because it's taboo or uncomfortable or whatever, but it's important. It's a huge marker of your health as a female if you're in your reproductive time frame.
Yeah.
Like my periods were normal, no big deal. Like I never had any bad symptoms or like, you know, I had PMS, but like, you know, not the PMDD. So I never had any issues. So I think I can, you know, I can't say for sure, but you know, everybody around me, my care team is assuming that like kind of that perfect storm was happening. You know, the stress of the diabetes and all the things kind of push me into that, which is fine because I don't have any history of my family. Like it's not a genetic type of thing, whatever. It's just like wild how the body will do everything it can to keep you alive until it can't. Yeah.
Now I'm always fascinated by that. Actually, it's to the detriment sometimes of people because they're like, no, I'm still doing it. I'm going to work. I'm doing my things. Like, you know, I'm like, yeah, it shouldn't be this big of a struggle.
I agree. Yeah. I know. And like every time, like my middle brother who has the fasting glucose of an angel, even though he probably has never had a vegetable in his life, he would be like, he can't sleep or has anxiety. And I'm always thinking, I'm like, okay, your gut's probably off. Like you should take a probiotic. You should do this stuff. Like, I just can see when people have like skin things or they're like, oh yeah, like I never go to the bathroom. And I'm like, that's a problem. Like the gut, you know, everything starts in the gut and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I feel like I could diagnose people just from their symptoms they're telling me.
I wish there was more to do about that still, like more that you could be certain about. And it wasn't such a crapshoot all the time trying to, like, I was just talking to somebody the other day who had SIBO and they hit her with like hundreds of rounds of antibiotics to kill it eventually. I'm like, Jesus. But then once they got it under control, she's doing a lot better. You know, but I mean, where are you going to find a doc? Listen, in a world where you can't find, it's a coin flip if you're going to find a doctor who will tell you to pre-bolus for your meals. You're going to find somebody who knows like how to identify SIBO and get rid of it. Like, come on,
I know.
Yeah. Talk about that for a minute. So you were so used to going through your health throughout your life. Did you just apply that thinking to the diabetes? And is that is that why your mom thinks it seems like you don't even have diabetes? Like, is that why?
Yeah. Cause I am super anal about my management, almost to my detriment, that it's too intense. And I think there's like a subconscious layer to that of like, maybe I don't really have it, or maybe I can cure myself of it if I never go past 140, or if I eat something and I still have a steady line. And like, it's just all these like unhealthy mentality type of things.
Hey, Kim, we got a little magical thinking going on here. What you got? Are you OCD? What do you got there?
I think I'm just super type A, and I really want to control everything. I think I felt super out of control over the last 2 years. And this is something that like I can attempt to control, but like I'll never be able to control diabetes. I can only manage it. And I am doing the job of a full-time organ that like I'm guessing on constantly.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it was really hard because I would be like, you eat the same thing every day, and every day there's a different result. You have to give 1 unit, 10 units, 3 units. You're literally eating the same thing. It doesn't matter. It's like, oh, well, I slept 1 minute less today, so I'm more resistant. Or the sun only was out for 10 minutes today, so I'm more resistant. It's like, that's what drives me nuts about diabetes. There's all of the variables that go into your blood sugar, not just the food you eat, especially being a female. And I'm just like, this is my nightmare. Like, it was just, I felt like I was playing dodgeball. But no, I wasn't playing. I was standing in the middle of the court, and I just get balls hit at me all the time. And I can never catch any of them and throw them back. I'm always just being
like,
hit.
So by moving at something, you feel like you're not being passive?
Yeah.
Okay. And did you ever figure out anything with all the hormone testing, or did that not go anywhere?
Actually, like I just got blood work done, and I've never seen so much green in my life, which was great. Also, like my, the only thing that is still a little weird is I have really bad seasonal allergies, and I'm allegedly allergic to dogs, but like it's not that high. So I just have like this one marker that's always higher. Other than that, everything is fine. So like I was saying, I started a diabetes research trial, which is really interesting. I don't know if they're still open. I think they might be closed, but it's a research trial for newly diagnosed. So you have to be, I think, over 18, you have to already like apply and start the drug within 6 months of your first insulin dose. I was a woman I met on Instagram. She lived abroad and told me, she was like, you should try the study. And so I applied, and I literally started the drug like 1 day before my 6 months anniversary of taking insulin. And so it was a drug that I took for a year, 2-year study, double blinded. So I don't know. No one knows if I had the drug or not, but I had side effects of the drug, which was mainly heartburn. And so I would take it for 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, twice a day. I would go in every 3 months, and they would like give me an EKG. They would test all my blood. They would make me drink this like disgusting protein shake. I wasn't allowed to take any insulin. I could take my long acting, but no fast acting.
Okay.
They would just monitor my blood every 30 minutes of like how that shake was impacting my blood sugar, which was like really terrifying to just watch it just be like high. You're like, and you can't do anything about it. And that was really hard, but it was really cool because I got all these free tests. So kind of going back to what I was saying of I'm obsessed with learning. They couldn't tell me a lot of the blood work because it was for the research trial. I got like 4 free EKGs. My heart's great, like all this stuff. And so I was like, I love this. I love being a guinea pig for science. And my research endo was great because, I don't really love my care team, but, you have to be your own doctor, so to speak, sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, I had to take hormone replacement supplements because of my early menopause. I had to go on birth control because it was either, I could wear a patch, and I was like, I already wear stuff on my body. I don't need something else I have to worry about changing. And so I just opted for birth control. But birth control made me so resistant. Like it was wild. Okay. And that was really dark time for me because it was like I was doing everything I was doing before, but it was different. And so I was like, okay, this is wild. And so my endo put me on metformin, and like metformin was kind of helping. And then she realized through my research trial that I still had some C peptides. So she was like, I think you should be on a GLP, because she was like, I typically like to give all of my diabetics that still have C peptides or have some small amount of functionality a GLP, because, there's regenerative properties and who knows all the things. I listened to that podcast that when you interviewed that man, I forget what he was taking, but he took a GLP, and now he no longer takes insulin.
He was taking the Manjaro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I was like, ooh, but also like, I'm like, I can't expect that same result. But I did start getting on a GLP on October 1st. Mm-hmm. I'm on Ozempic. So I take Ozempic, I take metformin, and I do insulin. So I'm like doing the most. It's been really helpful. So I can, it's just like, again, playing dodgeball. It's like I have to take this medicine to help with this, but it's increasing this. I have to take that to keep that at bay. And it's just like,
feels
diabetes
like a lot,
math.
right?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's really frustrating sometimes to be like, I'm taking all of this. And there's like people out there that are just stuffing their face with onion rings and Diet Coke and they're fine. And it's like,
well, they're fine for now. You know? It's not going to, listen, maybe they'll roll all the way through, but it just seems unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
I would do what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like if you feel good about what you're doing and you're seeing value from it, then do it. Did the Ozempic bring down your insulin needs?
So what I was doing when I was taking, I'm on Tresiba and I'm on a Humalog Junior pen. Mm-hmm. Still has half units, which I think is one of the reasons why I haven't moved to a pod yet. I was on Basaglar when I first got diagnosed. Yeah. And first of all, no one ever told me there was multiple types of insulin. So I just was like, this is what you take when you're diabetic. This is the insulin. And then people were like, well, there's faster, or there's like extra long acting, and taking Tresiba like really changed my vibe with long acting.
People seem to love Tresiba generally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. Like, I think it's great. It's whatever. So I had some Basaglar left over, and I was needing to take like a small little bump of insulin before bed for my overnights, because my overnights were always like, and when I say high, like my high and other people's high are probably different, but like, I don't really want to sleep at 150 all night. Like that's my sleep time is like kind of my bonus time for diabetes. Like, can I try to get my average a little lower to, when I'm sleeping and not eating and not doing anything, it's like when I'm going into battle, when I wake up, like,
I agree.
So I was taking that. And so the Ozempic eliminated that, and also eliminated my variation of when I would go up a unit for my long acting here and there, just depending on like this, where I was in my, like the hormone path.
What's your dose?
I take 9 units every morning.
I'm sorry. Ozempic, I mean.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm at 0.5.
Okay. All right. So 0.25 wasn't enough?
That was what I first did for the first 4 weeks. And then I asked my endo, I was like, so do I just keep on that? And she was like, yeah, let me know if anything changes. And so I've been on it. But
because you're not trying to impact your weight or your...
No,
right.
God, no.
Right.
No.
What about eat? Are you able to eat on it? Fine?
No.
I was going to say, why don't you try 0.25 again?
I know. I'm just like, I think like the nausea now is not as consistent as it was. Like in the early, probably 4 or 5 weeks, it was really bad. You're on Manjaro?
I use Zepbound. It is Manjaro, but yeah.
And like, I've heard you talk about your journey, and like, and the one thing, I actually listened to one of the pods the other day around the woman she's like, she was young, in her early 20s. She takes Ozempic, and she was saying how she was having aversions to meat. And I was like, me too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
At dinner, like at night, like morning, not really that much. I like work out first thing in the morning. So like sometimes there's some nausea because I take like electrolytes in the morning, but not crazy. But like in the evenings is when, and I smell the food cooking, that's when the nausea hits.
Okay. I don't know why you wouldn't try 0.25 just to see, because they move you up to lose weight. But if you're not trying to lose weight and 0.25 is helping, then it's helping. Like, right? So like, it's not like you're going to keep going, because if you push more, you're not going to be able to eat anything.
I didn't even think of that. Like, see, again, with the education for adults with stuff, no one tells you. You're just like, here you go.
They're reading you the label. You do 0.25 for 4 weeks, and you go to 0.5, and then we get you up to the dose. And if it's too much, then we'll back you off. But we'll see in the future. Because they don't know what they're talking about either.
No,
they're following the label.
They don't.
Yeah, which is, listen, God bless, that's what they should probably be doing. But there's a lot of people out there, like, microdosing GLPs. I know people who are like putting it into vials and doing like little bits every day instead of like one injection a week. So there's people are trying a bunch of different things right now off label with it. But yeah, I mean, if you're not eating, you want to eat, right? So
I know it's bad. Like it's better now than it was. The nausea is what really, and it's not like bad nausea where it's like I'm out for the count. It's just like, when you have a paper cut and you get lemon juice in it here and there, it's annoying. Like it's just in the background.
I've been at it for like a year and a half or more now. It doesn't touch me anymore like that. But there's a lot you're adjusting to as you're using it for sure. And I just said to somebody the other day, I'm like, look, I was like, I don't know that I had like a solid bowel movement for like 9 months, but I was losing weight. So I was like, whatever. And then eventually my body did get accustomed to it. And now that's just not a problem anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm starting to sit here today thinking like, I haven't gone to the bathroom in a bit.
Yeah.
You do have to pay more attention because you're impacting your systems, right? So like you're now kind of in control of it. You pay attention a little more, add a little, I add like a magnesium oxide if I'm not going to the bathroom. Like, there's little things you have to do. You can't just sit around and go like, I injected the stuff and this is what's happening now. You're not going to succeed if you're not paying attention to it, I think.
I agree. And it's all different. Like your experience is different than my experience.
Sure.
Well, obviously, you're not a type 1 diabetic, but everyone kind of just like is like, oh, you're on Ozempic, and they just immediately think I want to lose weight. And I'm like, that's like the one, like my endo was basically like, if you come back, I have an appointment in January. She said, I go every 3-4 months and we're going to monitor your weight. And if you're if you lose weight, like if you lose more than, I don't know, whatever, we're going to have to find a different solution or take you off it. So, and I was like, no, like this is really helping me. But like, and then there's that vain side of me that's like, yeah, let's lose weight. Like, so I'm like in this weird like push and pull of like, I want to be healthy. I want to be taking this, but I also don't mind losing, weight. Like what female's like, no, I don't want to lose weight. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, listen, female, male, whatever. Listen, the person I spoke to the other day using a GLP that actually helped a lot of their hormonal issues, right? Like PCOS stuff and like, in a much better situation now. That was their concern. They were like, if I go back to the doctor and they see that I've lost weight, like they can't take this from me. This is helping me with so many different things. You know what I mean? Like it's not a perfect plan. It's like, here's this drug they made for type 2 diabetes. People found that it was, really effective for weight loss. And then suddenly people started realizing like the same person I'm talking about, they had kidney issues that cleared. So their kidney issues cleared and their hormonal stuff, like really bad periods, not like painful, but like periods that would last like weeks,
Yep.
And all this is taken care of, but they lost some weight. You'll hear her episode eventually, but give her a ton of credit. She went back to the doctor and she said, look, these are drinks that are high calorie. I want you to like prescribe them for me because I need the calories. I'm not able to get them in because of the GLP, but the GLP is helping me with so many other things. I'm not letting you take it from me.
Yep.
So that was a great, I thought, fix for that person.
Yeah. And I agree because everyone thinks of GLPs and they immediately go to weight loss. And I'm like, do you not realize how many other benefits a GLP can offer individuals, especially a type 1 diabetic that doesn't make this hormone anymore?
Yeah. Our problem, Kim, and actually, it because this is your job. And I did want to ask you, like, you said type A. I didn't want to like use a phrase that you didn't use.
Yeah.
But being in marketing and advertising, it's such a thing that you're really not in control of. Like you can make the best thing and put it out there. And if people don't react to it, like I just felt like that must be crazy for you to like go like, I know we did a great job. How come nobody clicked on this? Yeah. That must be like, it must be a bad job for you is what I was thinking.
I know. No, it's actually fun. I'm on the account side. So I manage the team that creates all our content.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes more sense.
and it's actually more fun now with like trends and stuff, like on TikTok. So, I'm mainly in the social media space. So, it's fun, but it is annoying when you're like, wait, this is so fun. We worked on this for so long and like no one's engaging with it. You're like, damn it.
It's upsetting. But my point is that you said, everybody thinks this about a GLP or, here's what people think about diabetes when I'm out in the world. The trouble is that whether you're a regular walking around person or a physician or whatever, everyone's really impacted by the way information moves around now.
Yep.
No one really understands anything. And you do know, it's funny because I was going to make this point, but you just sort of made it like your job's kind of a game. It's almost like you're just trying to keep a top spinning for as long as you can or something like that, right? When that's the way it works, like if you are on YouTube, for example, I'm going to feel like I'm all over the place for a second, and you see people doing reviews of things, you realize that they know that the algorithm needs them to say a certain number of good things and a certain number of bad things about the thing they're reviewing. And so I had been looking into a product for a while, and I came to realize that the things that people were telling you to be scared of about the product, they're not really an issue. It's just the only thing they could find to say about it that wasn't positive. And so then when you look out into the ether, people believe that this product has this bad aspect to it, but it doesn't. It's just the thing that YouTubers use to say, but here's my con. And I wonder how much of that impacts GLP medications, right? Because people come on and they're like, you know, like if I say too many good things, right, someone will roll up on you and say like, oh, you're pimping for a pharma company. And so I have to say some bad things. So what's the bad thing I'll say? I'll say this thing because I heard someone else say it. And then down the road, poor Kim's in her office and her doctor is now spouting this back out like it's true. But it's just the way social media works. You know, because you're in it. And I don't know how clear I was to everyone listening, but I think a lot of the things you think are just things people say to feed the algorithm to get their clicks to try to stay in their game a little longer. That's all.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that.
Yeah.
And like, you know, we saw a lot of it, you know, with the election and all of that. It is a game of like what people read and what they read a headline of or what they're actually educating themselves on. And I think that goes for everything in life, whether it's a new coat you're looking to buy or a medicine you want to take or all these things. It's like, don't just read a headline.
I will tell you, like using politics as an example, you don't know anything about the people running for office. What you know is what the other side wants you to know about them.
Yep.
That's what you know. And you will spout it off like I heard, or you know what he did, or you know what she did, like that thing, because you heard it 3 times. But when you have my job, what you recognize is what you're hearing is talking points.
Yep.
And the talking points have been fed to all the influencers. So they all say the same thing. You catch 2 or 3 of them saying it. Now you think it's a rule.
Yep.
Yeah. And now you believe it. That's marketing. We should all have to take a psychology and a marketing course in college so that you know how the world is trying to manipulate you. Yeah.
I know.
Going back to what we're talking about is this is where you get like, I had to suspend somebody in the group the other day because she just, like, somebody was trying to talk about their GLP medication and what it was doing for them and their insulin resistance. They're having this really kind of high level conversation about how GLPs are helping people with diabetes and other things. And this person just swoops in and goes, oh, I didn't know we were allowed to talk about the skinny girl drug here.
Oh my God.
And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to take this person and explain to them how they're being manipulated by influencers on Instagram and YouTube and like Facebook algorithm. And like, I can't do that. Like, and if you just say to them, like, you don't know what you're talking about, like you have to go find, like, listen to what these people are like experiencing. It's the next level of how this is going to happen. Like people who, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but people who can kind of remain true to their message are going to be the next level of information disseminators. You know, and that's just where this is going to go from here. But then there's the catch 22, of course, is always going to be that no one's going to believe you if you're doing it, because if you're big enough to be heard, you're taking ads from somebody.
Yeah.
Like you listen to this podcast, like generally speaking, I don't think you would listen to me and think he's being told to say something by somebody.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have companies on that buy ads and I'll have companies on that don't buy ads. And when they want to come on and talk about their product, they're doing a marketing pitch.
Right.
It's what they're doing, right? Like I just did one with a CGM and you listen, there's all the information out there. You basically just had their website like read to you. And this is what they want you to know about it. Now you've got to go out and do the rest and figure it out, right? I don't take that ad. You don't get this podcast.
Right.
Like, so there's my catch 22. At the same time, I can tell you that no one has ever pulled me aside and said, say this. Don't say that. Please don't say this. Please. No one's ever done that.
Yeah. I mean, like, let's just say we're talking about, you know, a CGM company or whatever, like they want to reach your listeners. So like they'll basically like do whatever, you know what I mean? If you say, no, I don't want to say that, I'll say this. They're like, okay, great. Just say our name. You know what I mean? Like just getting that awareness out there is worth it enough for them, you know?
I got this great story told to me one time. There was a company that was not buying ads on the podcast, and they were in a marketing meeting. I got this phone call from a person and they said, listen, I've been tasked with buying ads on your podcast. And I'm like, oh, awesome. You know, we started talking and everything. And the person said, we were just in a meeting, you know, in a room. This was back before COVID, when everybody got into a room to talk to each other. And the CEO of the CEO of the company, this is a big company too, came rolling into the meeting, stuck their head in the meeting and said, hey, everybody's doing great. I just wanted to say, why don't we have ads on Juicebox? Let's fix that. And then walked out. And as the person was walking out of the room, someone stopped and said, hey, we don't buy ads on that podcast because he makes fun of us.
Ooh.
And the guy goes, he's making fun of everybody. Pay attention.
I love that.
And that was the end of it. And so now I do ads with that company.
I love that.
Yeah. And so like, has there ever been a time where somebody has said something terrible about an advertiser and I thought to myself, oh gosh, this is probably not good? I've thought that. Have I ever stopped them? No. Like I never have, because in the end, I have enough advertisers. And if somebody got pissed and left, I got to be honest with you, like somebody else would flow right into the spot. It wouldn't really be a big deal to me. What's happening to the people on the other side is worrisome to me, because everyone thinks they know something, but you don't realize in this age of digital like information, you just know what people want you to know. That's it. And even when you dig down, you're still just getting some version of disseminated information. And it's not just about diabetes, it's about everything.
And that's like why I really want to continue to raise awareness and education, because it's like, it's the one thing I can help on. There's just so much information and confusion and all this stuff out there that it's the only thing that I can do. Like I can't even educate my own mother to understand that like, this is something real. And because she's like, well, she's on Mounjaro, but she's on it for type 2 situations and really wants to use it for weight loss, which is fine. That's great. Works for her. But like,
awesome. She's
like, why are you on it? You don't need it. Like, she just doesn't understand. And so she just thinks, again, like what majority of Americans think, a GLP, weight loss, you know, the celebrities taking Ozempic and Ozempic face and all this stuff. And I'm just like, you do realize that weight loss is one aspect of what this drug can do for your body, especially for a body that doesn't produce all the hormones that a type 1 diabetic doesn't produce. Like, it's not just insulin. There's way more other things. Like I forget the hormone's called, but it's the hormone that like can have trouble with you feeling full. So you eat more. You know what I mean? Like that's what the GLP helps with. Like it's way more helpful than it is hurtful. And it's not a weight loss drug. Yeah. I guess it
does so many different things, and you're going to find out in the future all the things that it's going to do. Like the study on kidney health, where the FDA said, it's wrong to continue this study because it's so obvious about how well it works. Start giving it to people. Let's stop studying it. Like that's how like positive that study was. And so who knows what else? I mean, listen, inflammation, right? We've been yelling about inflammation for 50 years. And now there's something that's bringing down people's inflammation. And instead of being like, wow, we found something that did that, what you hear instead is, oh, Ozempic face. But what you don't know about Ozempic face is that it's just some YouTuber who one day said, by the way, when people are fat and they lose weight, that's what their face looks like. Okay. Like that's what happens. And then your elasticity comes back. And if you're lucky, like, look, I got to tell you something. I had a double chin that I don't have anymore. And I was so worried that I was just going to look like George Lucas after I lost weight, which is a very old reference for people. But nevertheless, like that was one of my concerns. And I got lucky and that didn't happen. But if it did happen, would I have had Ozempic chin, or was I just fat and now I'm not as fat anymore? Some YouTubers like, hey, I'm noticing a lot of people losing weight have that look on their face. I'll call it Ozempic face. And then everybody else will call it Ozempic face. And then they'll drive my clicks up and then I'll sell my clicks to somebody else.
Yep.
And by the way, Google owns YouTube, and it's like pay attention. This person doesn't think you have Ozempic face. They think that your little lizard part of your brain's going to go, us and them, I'm us, they're them. Ozempic face is bad. See, people are using that skinny girl drug. They're bad. I'm good. We're on a team. I'm winning. They're losing. in the end, you're all losing because it's just about clicks and minutes so they can serve you ads. Right? There's no such thing as Ozempic face.
I know.
Here's another one for you. EVs don't just catch on fire all the time.
Yep.
Like, these are the things that you're being told every day on. I bet you that neither of the people running for president were either as bad or as good as you thought they were.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So anyway, and Kim knows because this is her job. Out there just manipulating all of you.
I know, right? No, I know. It's like there was one time a couple years ago when my dad was complaining about ads in his Gmail or something. And I looked at him, I go, you didn't realize like that's the reason why I have a job. And he was like, what? I didn't get it.
Yeah.
But he was like, get this ad off of here. I'm like, Dad, I can't do that.
It's sales. Listen, I'd rather this than a guy show up at my front door with a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah.
Hello, can I dump some ashes on your floor and vacuum them up for you? Oh my God, did you not go to college? Leave me alone.
Right.
This is a very old business. Like, marketing, there's, people used to stand up in the middle of town and yell about like, hey, this oil will make your skin. Like, it's, this is what's going to happen. I don't mind that it happens. I even understand that it happens. I'm confused at how people don't understand it's happening.
I know.
That's the part that throws me off. So
I know. It's wild.
Yeah. So when you hear people say you can't pre-bolus your meals, it's dangerous. That's just somebody who heard that one time. And then another person heard it and said it. And then one person one day gave themselves too much insulin before they ate and they got low. And then they took that as confirmation that that's what happens. And then before you know it, it's 20 or 30 years later, the insulin's changed 3 different times. And you still have a doctor out there who says you can't do that. And then I meet a person who's 40 years old, who's had diabetes for 25 years. They have gastroparesis. They're on their way to other problems. And one day they find the podcast and pre-bolus their meal and go like, oh, why didn't anybody tell me this? Like, how come somebody's been giving me the exact opposite of good advice for the last 30 years I've had diabetes?
Yeah.
I haven't said this in a long time, okay? But there's a mom and a little girl, and they're making a meatloaf. The mom, she shapes the meat, and then she gets the pan, and then she cuts the edges off the meatloaf. And she, by the way, I think it's a pot roast in the story. Let's say pot roast. She takes the pot roast out. She cuts the edges off and she puts it in her pan. She cooks it. The little girl says, Mom, why'd you cut the ends off the pot roast? She goes, I don't know. It's how my mom did it. So call grandmom and see. So the little girl calls grandmom, says, Grandmom, my mom just cut the ends off our pot roast and cooked it. Like, what's the reason for that? And she goes, oh, I don't know. I've always done it that way. It's how my mom did it. Great grandmom's off in the home. She's 97 years old. One day they all go visit her and the little girl runs up to her super excited and says, Mom and grandmom cut the ends off the pot roast. And they say that that's how you taught them to make it. Why did you do that? And the old lady thinks and she thinks and she thinks. And she goes, oh, I had a really short pan.
Oh.
and so you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. And that's a bad thing around medicine. That's my point. My point is that there are people with diabetes who are doing things because there's still a doctor who was giving somebody regular an MPH and that guy's still practicing somewhere.
Yep.
That's why. And he doesn't even know. He doesn't know what he's talking. He doesn't know what Traceba is. He doesn't prescribe it to his patients. And, I don't know. I hope this conversation is helpful for people. This is what they mean when they say advocate for yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
And just coming out of my story, a lot of my friends have been like, hey, thank you. I went and I got blood work done and I have this genetic thing or I have this, and they're making decisions about their health. And I think that's awesome. And my one thing to people listening, which I'm sure they're probably already on top of their health, or if they're not, push for extra blood work. Don't just get your A1C tested. Find out what else, get a metabolic panel done, do it twice a year, not just once a year. It's very typically inexpensive with your insurance to cover. I typically pay between $20 and $25 for blood work. I'm fortunate enough to have access to healthcare that I'm able to do these things, but I just advocate for yourself. Don't just take what your endo says. Come to your endo with questions. Push your endo on things. I pushed my endo to get me on a GLP. I was she coded me as type 1 and type 2. That's how I was able to get it since I was so resistant. It's you can't just listen to a doctor and just think oh, well, my doctor said to do this. Question them sometimes if you don't feel comfortable. Push them. Do your own research. Be careful of your research. Try things out. See what works for you, because you're the one that lives with this condition day in, day out, not your endo. Your endo sees you for maybe 20 minutes every 3 months if you're lucky. you just got to advocate for yourself. That is the biggest thing that I have learned, is that like doctors aren't your only person, you know, like you are your own doctor at some aspects. Take those learnings, figure it out. You're going to fail a ton, but figure it out. Don't be afraid.
Stop taking like, oh no, that's not how it works as the final answer.
Yep.
I am married to a much prettier lady than I should be, because at some point in my 20s, I thought, what do I got to lose? I'll ask her. And I do that with everything. Like Arden's, you know, the same thing. Like she's been using Mounjaro, but the injector pen is too much for her. Like she just can't eat enough. So, and she's, by the way, and we've been talking about this a little more and more, Arden has a really terrible like needle phobia. And so it's hard for her. So she's been using Rybelsus now for a few days. Like it's a pill, and is it as good as like Mounjaro? Probably not, but like we're working on trying to like make it work for her. Like where do we get a balance where she can still eat but have impact on her blood sugar? And how do you get that? You get a doctor who says the medical version of like, that girl's probably too pretty for me, but I'll ask her anyway. You know, and look what you did. Like the doctor was like, hey, I'll just, like, she's got insulin resistance. If she didn't have type 1 diabetes, she'd have type 2. So she's got type 1 and type 2. And then and then the insurance company goes, oh, okay, well, here's your Ozempic. And will they catch up and put a stop to that? Who knows? But then the next person who comes along and figures out how to get around it will get around it, and then we'll all get around it. Like, but if you're busy being that person online or in your life that just goes like, Ozempic's not for type 1s. It says on the label, not for type 1s, could cause low blood sugar. Think a little bit, like, just expand. And I know there are even people out there who are like, look, a lot of people use things and they don't understand them, and it can be dangerous for them. And that is 100% true. Like there's a reason that label says not for type 1s, could cause DKA, could cause low blood sugars. I understand. Like I know why it's there. But we all don't have to suffer because someone doesn't understand.
Right.
When did it stop being incumbent upon people to take care of themselves? Like it's the way freedom works. Like you don't get to take my freedom away from me because you're scared of what I'm going to do with it. Like we all get freedom, okay? And some people do a good job with it and some people do a bad job with it. And Ozempic's out there, and some people are going to understand it and use it well, and some people aren't. But we can't let nobody benefit because some people might do it the wrong way.
I agree. And that goes not just GLPs, even everything. With insulin too. Like I feel like I was told to be so conservative with insulin because you don't want to go low. And I'm like, sure, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, but like, I'd rather be on the lower side, like kind of how you're like, be bold with insulin than be in the 200s because I'm afraid to be under 70. Like, this might be whatever, but I don't mind being 65, 70. I don't feel bad in that element. Like, obviously I'm not like going to be ride 65 all day, but like, if I go down to 69, I'll take like a little 2 to 3 carb piece of candy and eat that and get back up and see where I'm at. Like, that is better. That's more easier for me to control. Just kind of like you say, you can get a low up. It's harder to get a high down. And then you probably will end up low anyway because you overcorrected. And it's just like,
You know, what's funny though, is the thing I just said, some people will listen to that and they'll be like, oh, I didn't know Scott was a right-wing lunatic. Like, you know what I mean? But trust me, you don't know my politics. Right. And you only think that because someone has told you that if someone talks about personal freedom or this, then they code that way. But that's, by the way, not true about me, but it is what a lot of people just heard and then thought. And and I'm telling you, like going back to the other conversation, like you got to start wondering why you're thinking what you're thinking. Right. And then apply it to your, I'm not saying this, I don't care about politics, like, and then apply it to your health. Like that's my bigger point. Like it's funny because what I just said 20 years ago, I would have coded as a super Democrat. People would have been like, oh my God, he's so liberal. Right. It's funny how like people, their version of who is on what side and what that means changes all the time. And again, I do think you're being manipulated by social media on that stuff as well. Yep. I agree. Right. I agree. And it's like, health should not be political like that. Like, I know that's a whole conversation in itself, but it's like, you can control your health, advocate for your health. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, do it. Like, don't listen to what society says. Figure out what you want to do for you. Do your own research. Yeah. And forget political, but like societally political, because that's what really, because Because look, you said it with your mom's like, she's using this medication that she knows helps her and you get it. And she's like, why do you have that? Like, oh my God, we're on teams on this one too, Mom?
God.
Yeah, but your mom's on team type 2. You're on team type 1, apparently, in her mind. Meanwhile, you're on team like, I just would like to feel better if you don't mind. And it's not constant. I do a really good job online of like, I really want anybody with diabetes to be able to be in my Facebook group. But every once in a while, you'll get somebody who's like, I don't understand why are there people with type 2 in here. It's called Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. And I'm like, I called it Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes, because Juicebox Podcast didn't really indicate diabetes to anybody.
Right.
And when I started it, I didn't know the podcast was going to get so big that it would attract people using insulin with type 2. I didn't know that GLPs were going to come into the world and that maybe I'd be one of the few people having like a realistic conversation about them so that other people with the other types of diabetes would show up. Like, I didn't know any of that was going to happen.
Right.
And I can't just change the name all of a sudden. This is what it is. And we let people with type 2 in here too, happily. And most, like, you know, there's 55, 56,000 members at this point, and they're active members too. It's not like some, like, it's not, it's not a shelved number, right? Like, and so, but every once in a while you'll get somebody who's like, this isn't what this place is for. And I'm like, I decide what this place is for, not you. And so if you don't like it, I hate to see you go, but get the fuck out. Right. Because this is for everybody. And if you're going to stand in the way of this being for everybody, then you're not part of everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's that simple. Again, that just made me sound like something to you. Trust me, you don't know me or how I feel.
Yeah.
People deserve free access to up-to-the-date information.
Yep.
And if it's not been clear as I've been talking for the last hour, I feel like that information comes from users, not that. That's how I feel.
100%. Like, I cannot tell you your podcast, like listening to other people come on, when Jenny's on, you know, like I was saying, my friend Carly that I met, talking to her about her experiences, I've met so many other people, like we talk about our day-to-day experiences. I learned so much from my community and from your podcast than a doctor has ever told me. I use my doctor for scripts, for blood work, and for like potential new advancements or this or that or whatever. But all my day-to-day management or complaining or bitching and all that, I go to my community or I put on your podcast and I'm like, what is this? Like, I learned so much about MDI on your podcast. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. No one told me anything. Everyone was like, here you go, inject yourself. And I'm like, when, where, like what do I do? And it's like, that's the problem.
Right. No.
Like, why do I have, I mean, God bless, I'm so grateful for your podcast, but like, why do we have to depend on a podcast? Why can't we depend on our care team?
Yeah. You get big enough in this space, like some people just aren't going to like you, which is fine and expected, right? And I always think to people, I'm like, you know, when they're like, oh, I hate that guy or whatever. I'm like, yeah, you should, it's not my fault. I didn't make the void that I filled. Doctors made the void that I filled. And then some doctors get it and some don't. And by the way, you could get lucky. You might end up with a doctor who knows everything that's in this podcast and more. And like you said, God bless, that's awesome, right? But for all the people who don't, what do they deserve to die?
Right.
You know, because you didn't get lucky enough to find a doctor who understood how your insulin worked, or, you know, that GLP medications might be for people, even if it's off label.
Yep.
You know, so I don't know, like, it's not my fault. I shouldn't have a job.
Right.
Like, I really shouldn't. I should be off doing something else. But this exists for a reason. And I didn't make the reason.
Yep.
You know? So I also didn't make the system it runs in. So when people are like, oh, he takes ads. Yeah. Because it's a full-time job.
Right.
You have listen, Kim, you oversee a group of people who do social media and advertising and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
An honest reaction. I have an editor, so I pay someone who does editing. Okay. And there are people who volunteer their time to help oversee the Facebook group. Other than that, I make the world's most popular diabetes podcast completely by myself. That's insane, right? Yeah. How many people do you think you'd have to hire to make my podcast?
Like, you know, you would have a producer, you'd have an editor, you would have like a manager that would help facilitate like appointments and talking to people, getting guests. Like, I would say you'd probably need to have at least 5 to 7 people under you to support
this. So I take ads, so leave me the fuck alone, okay?
Yeah.
I'm definitely not looking for anybody to feel bad for me, right? I make a podcast for a living. Like, it's not a bad way to live. But as a matter of fact, I had to tell somebody the other day, I'll tell you the story in a second. This is how it has to happen. This is a full-time job. Like, at 11:30 at night, when you're in bed trying to get lucky, I'm on Facebook, like going like, this person's got to go. I'm typing thoughtful notes to people. I see why you feel like this way, blah, blah. I'm in the shower making social media content in my head. I'm going to record with you. And then I'm going to like turn and put up a blog post that I had to put together. And then I'm going to I am doing like the job of 1,000 people. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not complaining. But when people complain back to me, like, I can't believe he makes money off of my diabetes. I'm like, you think that's what's happening? I'm like, great. You have no idea what it is to make this thing work and for it to be successful. Right. So,
right. Like, you're not doing it for ads. Like, that's not why you're in the game. You're doing this because your daughter was diagnosed. You saw a huge gap in her education and help. And as a care person, like, I can't even imagine having a toddler. Yeah. Or a baby, let alone having oh my God, I just, when I see parents that have type 1 children, it breaks my heart. Like, I just can't even imagine it. But like, you're helping people. Like, I don't understand why people give you a hard time, but like, maybe
I don't understand that they don't understand that my electricity costs the same as theirs, and
right.
And by the way, I've had a 2-year-old with type 1 diabetes, a 3, a 4, a 5, all the way up to a 20 so far. I so far can't find one age that was better or easier than the others. So far, they've all been pretty horrible.
Yeah, pretty horrible. I know. I just like, I would love to not have diabetes, but I'm glad that I was diagnosed when I was and not when I was like a little kid. But then, you go back and forth because it's like I had a whole life where I didn't have to worry about what I was eating. But I also went through college, got my first job, got through the dating, marriage, such stuff. Like, so,
it's all perspective.
If I have to have it, I'm glad I got it when I did and not when I was a lot younger.
Me, it's all perspective. Like, if you're willing to look at it that way, then that's why it feels positive to you.
Yeah. I mean, you have to, or else you'll just be pissed off and upset and all the time, which I obviously am, like constantly, but I can't change it. So it's like, why be negative and upset all the time? That's way more stressful and will just make my sugars worse anyway.
Yeah. No, 100%. And you could choose to say, oh my God, like I just got married and I was in the prime of my life and my son and it ruined everything. But you could come from that perspective and say that, but then that's where you're going to live then, if that's how you decide to look at it. So,
right.
Call that ignorance, or if you can call it whatever you want, but ignorance is bliss a little bit. So
I agree.
Is there anything we didn't talk about that we should have?
No, I don't think so. I think we talked about it all. And I just I hope if someone's listening to this, that it helps them, or if they have any questions or whatever, like, I hope somebody's like, oh, I had that problem too, or something. I just want to help people, especially in the diabetes community. Cause it's like we're all just trying to figure it out on our own and we're all kind of scared all the time. And, I just think this community is amazing, especially the community you've built. So it's like, let's just all lean on each other and not be so just, be like, well, I'm on this or I'm on that, or you take this and I take this much. It's like, come on, we're all just trying to survive.
Yeah. Listen, it's my opinion. You can do whatever you want with it. But if you find yourself comparing yourself to other people or being mad because someone has something or doesn't have something, or I honestly don't think those are your thoughts. I think those are thoughts that have been given to you by, apps and social media and the way things work nowadays. And, the desire to, get your clicks and your eyes and your views and your hearts and all those other things. Like, just try stepping back for a minute and just thinking what you think. And
absolutely.
And then just ask out a really pretty girl that definitely shouldn't say yes to you. And I must have caught her on a bad day. She must have been feeling
or a good day.
I don't know. I think she was probably just feeling bad about herself that day or something. She's like, this is the jackass I deserve, probably. Anyway, you got to go out there and advocate for yourself in all aspects. And that doesn't mean pitting yourself against somebody else or their thing.
100%.
I don't know how we got to this point, but just seems important to say once in a while.
I agree.
Yep. Kim, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I love talking to you. I love your podcast. It's so helpful. So keep it up. And I
appreciate that very much. I really do.
Thanks, Scott. Talk to you soon.
Having an easy-to-use and accurate blood glucose meter is just one click away. ContourNext.com/juicebox. That's right. Today's episode is sponsored by the Contour NextGen blood glucose meter. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast was sponsored by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. Get started today with US Med. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. This episode was sponsored by Touched by Type 1. I want you to go find them on Facebook, Instagram, and give them a follow, and then head to touchedbytype1.org where you're going to learn all about their programs and resources for people with type 1 diabetes. I can't thank you enough for listening. Please make sure you're subscribed or following in your audio app. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Hey kids, listen up. You've made it to the end of the podcast. You must have enjoyed it. You know what else you might enjoy? The private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast. I know you're thinking, Facebook, Scott, please. But no. Beautiful group, wonderful people, a fantastic community. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. Of course, if you have Type 2 or you're touched by diabetes in any way, you're absolutely welcome. It's a private group, so you'll have to answer a couple of questions before you come in. We'll make sure you're not a bot or an evildoer. Then you're on your way. You'll be part of the family. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.